Thanks very much, guys, for jumping on this today. It's a nice day in London. So today I wanted to take you guys through some of the work that I've been doing in my spare time, and the real kind of silver lining of the COVID-19 sort of epidemic has had some positive impacts on my life, and I wanted to kind of talk about some of the projects I'm doing with that. Just an introduction to who I am. My name's Sean Rodrigo. I'm a immersive artist by trade. So I work a lot more in virtual reality as my main job. It's not a real job, and I don't pretend that it is. But I'm very privileged to be able to do that for a living. But I've also, in the last couple of years, shown a real keen interest in making and creating things in physical form as well as digital. So the work that I do is quite varied, but the work that I've been recently is 3D printing sculptures and physical designs from virtual models or scans, 3D scans. So this is the sort of work that I do most of the time. I'm in a headset painting and things like Google Tilt Brush, but I've seen this as an opportunity to sort of extend art outside of just the digital world into physical scans. So this is some of the projects that I've done recently. I actually started, if you just on screen, doing photogrammetry models with either a 3D scanner that I have, which is a little radar sort of LiDAR-based sort of scanner, and also some photogrammetry models, which actually this is a LiDAR. This is actually from this structure scanner. This is my sister and her 1-month-old baby. Which I was very wrapped with, and I was able to 3D print that with my first kind of hobby level printer. And then, as I was mentioning, I've sort of got really keen on taking photos of sculptures and different things to make 3D models. This is Antoni Gaudi, the Barcelona-based architect, and this has been sort of my first foray into it. I also scanned my partner asleep on the couch, which I was a big fan of, and she forgave me eventually. But the ones on the screen that you can see on from my desktop are two projects that I decided to make just out of the fact that I have been, locked down and trying to work out what to do with my time in the absence of any sort of in-person activities, which has been the vast majority of the work that I've been doing over the last couple of years. And I thought, well, there's not everyone is locked inside their house with the equipment that I have and the time that I have on my hands. So I decided that the first project on the left you'll see is kind of like a rocket booster, designed for my upstairs neighbors' kids who are very avid bike users. And it's actually a bike attached rocket booster with flames coming out of the back of it. And it's all 3D printed. A mixture of different materials, so PETG for the flames, because they're a bit brittle looking, and then PLA for the rockets. And I painted it with a rub and buff paint effect after spray painting it black, so to make it look a bit more like a NASA rocket. Actually, the rockets themselves are actually from the Apollo 11 mission, and the flames, I actually used a program called Masterpiece Creator, which is a 3D sculpting tool that you can use in VR. So I'm painting with my hands to create those organic shapes, which was really fun. And then I also kind of went a bit overboard with the whole idea and put it in a box with the NASA logo on it, and put a security clearance in there, and a letter from the director of the 1970s flight crew requesting the upstairs kid to come and inspect the rockets before launch, and did it all as accurate as I could with the real signature of the real person. And I just sort of thought to myself, what could I do that would make a kid really excited and happy, and what would I want when I was a kid? If I was living, upstairs from a nerdy guy with lots of his own equipment, what would I do? So that was the first idea. And then the second one was actually a hint from a neighbor who had said that her son was a Doctor Who fan. So I found a Doctor Who model on Thingiverse and mounted it on some piece of wood that I dremeled, and painted it all up, and put some sort of made like a Cosmos handle on some LED lights that I got from I think I just got on the internet or somewhere like eBay. and made it into a light. So it's got a motion sensor. So these are just like two little hobby, one-day build sort of hobby projects, largely inspired by Adam Savage and the Tested team, who do an amazing job. And I always kind of wanted to do that, but never really had the time because I've been running around London trying to make VR a mainstream thing as much as I can. But now this is a sort of a hidden hobby that has turned into a bit of an obsession at the moment. So the main thing that I wanted to talk about was a project that sort of came about because of a little bit from the sculpture designs that I sort of mentioned, and I sort of tried to work out what I could do with the sculptures, because a lot of them were sitting around my apartment. And I had been giving them to people as presents, but I was also kind of wanting to do something bigger with it. And I went to the William Morris Gallery and took about 100 photos on my smartphone. And for those who aren't aware of it, the William Morris Gallery is in Walthamstow in East London, where I live. And I was able to create a photogrammetry model of William Morris based on the bust that came out of that was actually in the gallery itself. So this is using a program called Autodesk Recap, and I used that to construct a three-dimensional model from hundreds of photos, all just on my smartphone, as I mentioned. So nothing super special. And that's where this project came from, the Mini Morris project. And because I kind of decided that it would be kind of an interesting experiment to see whether or not I could raise enough money to buy materials to teach myself how to create models in mass from digital versions. So everyone's always interested in making handcrafted things, but I very much wanted to sort of work out a way of being able to reproduce those digital objects as many times as possible without it being too expensive. So this print is in just black it's ABS, Eco ABS, I believe. It's printed on my Dremel D45, which is a very nice printer, very awesome for sort of automated and it sort of does time lapses and all sorts of things. And this took about 30 hours on 10 microns. I'm not sure if I'm got that right. But yeah, so 0.10 of a millimeter layer heights, and was able to get a really nice finish. And then I finished it by painting it with an acrylic medium that has a volcanic material in it, and it gives it this sort of bumpy organic feel. And I wanted it to get rid of the lines, and I wanted to create something that was a bit more kind of bronze-like. So that's a master. So I printed 3 of these over 30 hours, and I'll flick through the document because I'm kind of cannibalizing that. But yeah, the purpose of the project was to create plaster sculptures for kids to paint, and activity packs to go along with it, by combining handmade processes such as mold making and casting with new technology such as 3D printing, 3D scanning, and digital model making. And the point of it was to really try and work out a way of being able to use this time, these resources, to raise enough funds to be able to enrich young people who are currently disconnected from their friends, stuck inside for the first time in a very long in a long part of history where kids are sort of isolated and unable to sort of connect with each other in a physical way. And then combining it with William Morris, who is a historical figure, quite famous in the UK, but also in East London, has become a bit of a local hero, who was quite a progressive mind, who was very pro social causes, and was also an amazing artist in creating tapestries and designs that stand the test of time from the 1800s to today. So during COVID-19, I thought it might be good to give all these children in the local area that are isolated, and some of which are in sort of single parent dwellings. They're 1 or 2 bedroom apartments, and sometimes they've got 2 or 3 children. And I know from the upstairs neighbors that it's probably very boring and lots of frustration going on with kids being stuck with their parents in small confines. So with the help of 2 local charities, one called William Morris Big Local and another one called Wood Street Walls or Urban by Nature. These are local funded organizations from the National Lottery. I was able to get enough money to be able to put all the money into the materials and create an assignment of 400 miniature busts, which is a drop in the ocean when it comes to the population of the local area. But it is just me and my partner in our apartment, in our flat in Walthamstow, making these all by hand. And it's taken me a couple of weeks, probably 2 or 3 weeks, to get to this stage. So this is a little bit more about the project. And I'm wanting to make this as a case study because I'm quite interested in the idea of potentially doing a Spanish version and a Scottish version and an Austrian version and even a local version with people who are alive now who don't have busts made of them, who may be important to certain communities, which is something I'm quite interested in doing. So I'll flick through this really quickly. This is the process that I went through. So the model on the far left is the actual sculpture within the Morris Gallery. It's a bronze sculpture that was made 150 years ago by an artist who donated it. The gallery is actually run by the Waltham City Council, so they're an amazing, very supportive group of people who are very much proud of our local kind of patriarchal sort of hero, if you can say that. In the middle, there is the 3D model that was created, and it's not perfect because I was using smartphone amongst other people. I think I'm getting messages about this project. That was a really fun project to see that come to fruition. But as you can tell, the texturing isn't perfect, but that doesn't really matter because it was it's going to be entirely 3D printed, so the texture doesn't matter. I 3D printed some on my hobby level printer and then on the D45. So that was a really fun project to get that working. I actually managed on the D45 to not print have to print without any supports, which was quite amazing, and the quality of the print is quite beautiful. So I did 2 on that printer and 1 on the Anycubic. From there, I painted it, as I mentioned, with black lava medium paint, which I really seem to love now. And then went through the process of watching lots and lots of YouTube and tutorials and contacting and picking the brains of industrial plasters in the Midlands to get hundreds of kilos of plaster. I think it was almost 200 kilos worth of plaster and 21 kilos worth of silicon. We had a carpenter called Gary Banks, who owns Banks Carpentry, volunteer to make me boxes, which were beautifully made to be able to pour the silicone in. And then I went through the process of making 4 separate master molds in varying different complexities, which you can kind of see behind me. Some are too big. I used way too much silicon in most of the time, but the silicon was the most expensive part. It was about £450 just for the silicon, and getting to learn how to make that and make sure the molds worked. But ultimately, it's actually fairly simple, and I was able to just basically pour it into the bottom, pour it into the top once it's cured, and separate it with Vaseline. And then you're able to make these beautiful kind of molds that feel magic when they come out. And this is the sort of finished and sanded version that I ended up having photographed by an amazing photographer called Richard, who you'll see on my Instagram account, which I'll show you later on. And Richard took some amazing photos of the final sanded. I know I go through every single one and hand sand them or sand them with the Dremel, depending on what the batteries are like, and get rid of all the hard edges and all the crusty flash that comes from the lines where the 2 molds meet. And then with the help of my amazing graphic designer slash fiance Gail, we were able to buy a bulk amount of boxes, paint samples, and we sat there and hand squeezed all the paints into these little pots because it was too expensive to buy them separately. And we also made an activity sheet which you can put the model on and paint on top of it to stop kids. So we spent a lot of energy just trying to make sure this was as good as possible to make sure that kids are really going to enjoy it and get hours, not minutes of enjoyment out of the process, which has been really exciting as a challenge and design challenge. And there have been some really great people who've helped us along the way with discounts and donations through our GoFundMe page to get to this stage, which it's been a really fun design challenge. And then from there, you can see the finished kits. They're these recycled cardboard boxes, which have this, have crepe paper and wrapping, and we actually managed to get some paint palettes, which was an extra push on the project. And then we distributed it with my Morrismobile, which you can see I made a 3D printed number plate, and then walked around about 50 on my own so far. And then I had a number of volunteers who were absolutely amazing and turned up. And I think in 2 days, we got rid of at least 150 in 2 days from just local community groups that are in council flats who have connections with all the people there, who are probably the people who need it most because these are high rises, and being isolated in those spaces could be quite taxing. So we wanted to try and make sure they went to a mixture of people. And the community has responded really, really well to it. And this is the most important slide. These are the happy faces of just 3 of the 200 that have currently gone out, kids who are painting them in all sorts of amazing ways. I've tried to encourage them to sort of use it as an exercise of learning about William Morris by looking at the placemat, as you'll see on the far girl with the pink faced version. She's her name's Olive, and she's actually Richard's daughter, who's the photographer. I have had a go at doing my own, so I've done a sort of photorealistic sort of version paint job, and then a kind of more impressionist sort of Picasso-inspired version. And I've made YouTube videos to help kids learn how to paint and mix colors. If they're too young, you notice that the younger kids obviously are less experienced with mixing paint. So we're making a series of videos on YouTube, which you can see on my website as well. So trying to make it all encompassing. We even had an AR, augmented reality version of William Morris that pops up on the page, and then also activity sheets that you can download as well. So my partner and I have really kind of just sort of taken it as a really exciting project to kill time and also teach ourselves something. So the things that I would love some support from, if there's anyone out there who has any contacts, any ideas. I mean, this is a project that currently has a limit at the moment of 400 sculptures, plus a little bit of a push with some of the bulk overfill that we've got. But we can only do 400 at this stage. But I know the community is screaming for them, and including communities in areas where we can't service because the funding we have currently is signposted for certain communities. So anyone who knows any sponsors, corporate sponsors that would like to have boxes in London or within reason from London for postage reasons, that would like to donate, then we can potentially give them boxes that they can then donate to their communities as well. That would be amazing. I have a push on the far side of the page that you can see. There are 2 QR codes that you can use to access with your phone. One is for our website, which you'll see up in writing later on, and one is for our GoFundMe page. We've got a push goal of £1,000. Anyone who's willing to donate would be amazing. And if you have any contacts with sponsors that we would love to include sponsored material or logos on our videos, that's one thing we're looking for a sponsor for. That would be amazing. That would be the really big thing. And all the money currently is going into paying the people we need to pay, such as printers and designers and people like that. And so I'm not taking any money out of this currently. And we are using this as an opportunity to just buy more materials. Just everything goes into buying more sculptures and sculpture materials such as plaster and silicone to make more molds. We'd also love anyone who has an interest in mold making, would like to, and it can get to E17 Walthamstow safely without being exposed to COVID-19, we can set up a station in the back of our apartment or potentially in a studio in Walthamstow with masks and gloves and everything to help create more, because I can only create maybe up to about 30 a day at current mold amounts. And then we're after bulk materials. Anyone who has really good contacts with further suppliers of plaster, silicone, electronics, anything that they think they could help. I'm really looking for those people as well. I have people who are really great, but potentially if we're going to make more, I need to find cheaper and easier ways of doing that. And then I'm also very interested in anyone who has contacts in manufacturing in any country at the moment. I'd love it to be UK, but anywhere that can reproduce thousands of these sculptures potentially at a much lower price than what it costs right now to make them. So somewhere that's automated that can deliver 1,000 would be amazing. So anyone who has any contacts in distribution or importing, please let me know. Supplies and material and brushes, paints, we've done that. Anyone who's interested in that. And then anyone who's interested in sort of, we're currently 3D printing little phone stands for people to watch YouTube videos on, so they can have their kids watch me painting and learn. Anyone who wants to print some and send them on to me, that would be amazing. And laser cutting, potentially there's some opportunities to extend the boxes as well. That would be amazing. So anyone who has any thoughts, please email me on Sean at Sean Rodrigo, which is my email address. The project is actually has a mini site on my website called minimorrisproject.co.uk, which is a hub for all the content that I've just spoken about, including activity sheets. If you have kids and you want them to do some activities, we can do that. And I have social media accounts as well. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that sort of stuff. Hashtag Mini Morris Project and at Mini Morris Project is where you'll find me. Please do contact me. Let me know how you go, and if you have any ideas or thoughts, I'm very pleased to field those questions. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And so thank you very much from me and Mr. Morris. Happy making.
Thanks very much, Sean.
No problem.
So we've had a couple of questions.
Great.
So the first one's from Woof. What
Nice.
is the LiDAR scanner that you use?
Yes, so I think I said, I'm not sure if I'm using the right term. It's interesting. So I think I've got it here. I've got it's called a structure scanner. And it is a infrared laser, which you can see there, and an infrared camera, which is there. And it uses the infrared sensor attached to a smartphone. They're about 300 pounds, give or take, from the US. And you can use it to create 3D models. I believe it's somewhat similar to now what is in the new iPad. So this is a little older now. I've just 3D printed cases and everything for it. But it does a really good job because it's really, really quickly. Alternatively, if you're interested in doing photogrammetry or 3D scanning, there are some really amazing apps out there, such as Displayland. If you want to look up display.land, that's a really interesting way of doing SLAM-based photogrammetry, where you use your phone to generate the model. And the alternative to that is using any camera you can get access to, but the better quality you can, and take photos of models or sculptures or buildings by moving around the object at different levels, so around in a sort of helix sort of approach around the object, and then using a program such as Autodesk ReCap, which if you were at university or you're a tutor, you can use for free from Autodesk. So there's lots of different ways. The easiest way would be to use either hardware that is inbuilt in something like the iPad Pro, the Structure Scanner, which is structure.io, I believe, is the website, or you can use photogrammetry such as a DSLR or a camera on your phone, but that just involves 1 or 2 extra steps, and you don't get to see the tracking as it goes along. So yeah, that's a really good way of doing it as well.
Nice. So we've got another question from Ian.
Great.
Which is, what technology do you want to explore next?
I would be very interested in trying to learn how to vacuform. One of the things we ended up doing was we ended up buying 400 paint palette mixing palettes because we had budget left over, which I wanted to still spend, and it wasn't enough to just make more sculptures. It was mostly really focused on sort of making the kits as good as possible. And we ended up having to buy them from an art supplier in Manchester. But the vacuforming idea potentially could have the opportunity to produce more. But the biggest issue we had at the moment was, as much as I would have liked to go off and buy a vacuform machine or even a cheap one, you can get ones on Amazon for about £100, which are for dental molds. It was just too much. It's too much work to produce sculptures all day, every day. So literally 8 to 10 hours a day making sculptures is one job, and then you've got to pack them, and then you've got to vacuform. So I was just trying to minimize the amount of time we spend on making them. So vacuform is quite cool. I really like laser cutting as well. I haven't done as much on laser cutting, but it's interesting to see what I can do mass produce and what we can make personal, because anything that we can mass produce just means that the price is cheaper. And when we're coming down to either selling a different version of this sculpture, maybe not this one, maybe something that I've made, because this one's made in conjunction with the gallery itself, but and then also just getting hundreds of them to schools and to people who really need them, the cheaper the better. So I'm interested in exploring that as a sort of, maybe even I'm interested if anyone's interested existingly in social enterprise level work. I'd be interested in seeing if I can extend this project into a social enterprise that can help pay volunteers an honorarium to help, and then help produce more for more people than just the people that I've been given, which is great. But the more people, the better, I think. It's quite a nice project.
Yeah, that's a really great idea.
Thank you.
We've got another question from Jean.
Great.
Can we see your VR work in London? And I guess anywhere else as well.
Of course, yeah. So if you type in SeanRodrigo.com, that will redirect to my website, which is actually, let me see if I can show you. If we have time, that is.
Yeah, we've got time.
So this is the mini site that I was talking. You can see all the plaster and all the materials that were used. If you go to virtualrealityartist.co.uk, I have a website there with all my VR work. I'm actually also, if you don't mind a plug, soon to be doing a course for a website called Virtual Academy, which is VRTL Academy, so these are all my videos here and everything. Virtual Academy is right here, VRTL Academy, and that'll be an online course as well. So if you're interested in learning virtual reality as a tool for designing, painting, and animating, that'll be the place you can go and watch that as a video on demand or a live course as well. So virtualrealityartist.co.uk is my website, and that's me.